Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Syarifah Desy Ramadhanti. So today I will present about my research. I will share the screen. All right. So my research has the topic with the use of fantasy movies to improve students' ability in writing narrative text. Okay, we move to the background, the research background. Yeah. So for my research background is about the writing and why I have chosen fantasy movie to and why I choose fantasy movie to improve students writing narrative text, right? So writing is a providing information describing a language through writing and writing in various types such as paragraphs and others. So writing is a language that is provided into write, and so there's various types of writing, like the example is paragraphs and others. Writing is essentially a knowledge which is knowing what is in the mind and then part it into written form. Okay, now there is a part of writing that is narrative text. So part of writing is so many. There is recount text, descriptive text, and others. But for this research, I will focus this on the narrative text. Okay, so narrative text is the text that contains stories with the various types, such as legend, myth, fable, folklore, and others. So narrative text has so many types that contain in there. So the purpose of narrative text is entertain the reader. So narrative text itu semacam short story yang memiliki type seperti legenda, mitos, fable, folklore, and others. Okay, narrative text structure must always be related to the past tense. So, narrative text memiliki ciri khas khusus bahwa dia menceritakan tentang masa lampau. Jadi, so narrative text itu memerlukan past tense sebagai strukturnya. The purpose of narrative text is to entertain the readers, and by presenting a story that will relate to the reader's emotions in it. And why I have chosen narrative text and why fantasy movies, because many students still cannot understand well about the material that has delivered about narrative text. So there are so many students still not can understand well about the structure of narrative text or what narrative text is look alike, okay? And how they want to deliver it into the writing. So I think with we using the fantasy movie for the media as the media for teaching narrative text, students will be mendapatkan gambaran how narrative text it look like. Okay, narrative text ini memiliki struktur yang sama dengan fantasy movie, di mana fantasy movie juga merupakan cerita yang mengandung legend, myth, fable, folklore, and others. Seperti itu. Fantasy movie will be the one media that will help students to understanding the structure of narrative text and will help teachers could improve their writing of narrative text. So in here, I wish that students will understand about narrative text and how to write it by we using the fantasy movie as the media or as the petunjuk how the narrative text look alike. Because if we just give the students about the example of narrative text just with the writing or the short story, I think it a very basic, right? And students is not want to could be more bored if they must read all the narrative text long as the short story that kebanyakan guru memberikan kepada muridnya. Seperti itu. Okay, now we move to the research questions. Also, for this research, there is the research questions such as follow. Is the use fantasy movies effective to improve writing English narrative text? And the second question is, if it's effective, how it can be effective? Okay, now we move to the research purpose. So there's the research purpose for teacher and for students. For teachers, is the purpose of this research is to find the effectiveness of using fantasy movies and to improve students' ability in narrative text. Also for students, it could be improve their ability in writing and understanding about the structure of narrative text. Okay. Now I will move to the research terminology of this research. Okay, there's writing skills, fantasy movies, narrative text, and class action research. Okay, now for the first one is writing skills. So writing skills is essentially a knowledge which is knowing what is in the mind and pour it into the written form. And for fantasy movie, fantasy films are films that belong to the fantasy genre but fantastic theme, usually magic, supernatural, even mythology, folklore, or exotic fantasy worlds. The genre is considered a form of speculative fiction, alongside science fiction films and horror films. Also, the genres do overlap. So we can see here a fantasy movie is contain the same genre like the narrative text. So that's why I choose fantasy movie as the media for teaching narrative text. Okay, now we move to the number 3, narrative text. Narrative text is a story with complication or problematic events and tries to find the resolution to solve the problem. So narrative text has the 3 structure. That is the orientation, the complication, and the resolution. The resolution is the end of the narrative text, that is solve the problem. Okay, so with the narrative text, I want they understand through this film. So they can choose where is the orientation, where is the events, where is the resolution, something like that. And then class action research. In this research, I will use class action research. Classroom action research is a research conducted in the classroom using an action to improve the quality of the teaching and learning process in order to obtain better results than before. I'm sorry. So in this research, I will using class action research in SMA Negeri 10 Pontianak for the 10th grade students. Okay. Now we will move to the frame of the theory. So the frame of the theory, also there is the teaching writing, teaching media, narrative text, and it contains to understanding the settings, understanding the characters, and personalizing. So teaching writing is we teaching the writing. It will, when we teach the students how to writing with a good grammar, with a good sentence. Okay, students come to grasp writing as a method of communication when a writing process is employed to teach writing. Furthermore, writing teaches children that they have valuable opinions, ideas, and thoughts to share with the world. And that's writing is an effective way to do. So descriptive writing, persuasive writing, instructive writing, narrative writing, and creative or fiction writing are only a few examples of different styles or modes of writing. Many kids are familiar with fundamental writing projects, including book reports, social study reports, short story, and essays on a variety of topics. And now there is teaching media. Teaching media is all physical tools that can present message and individuals of learners to learn. Example, books, movie, tapes, slides, and etc. From the above definition, it may be drawn to the conclusion that teaching media is all teaching tools that teachers use as in term mediates to convey instructional material in the teaching process and to facilitate achieving the purpose of learning. In one of the study, filming media will be used. One medium teach of educational text. Movies are in themselves moving pictures, characters, and story portrayed by impression to be seen. Okay, now we move to the narrative text. Based on the Wikipedia, the structural foundation that underpins the sequence and manner in which narrative is given to a reader, listener, or viewer is referred to as a narrative structure. The plot and the setting are the two main narrative text structure. For a teacher, the benefits of a lesson that can be taken by student is the most important thing, isn't it? A teacher is not a person who only wants his student to get high marks on exam or tests. She has a main goal which take the advantage of the lesson she teach. And here's the benefits that students can get when studying narrative text. There is understanding the settings, understanding the characters, and personalizing. Right. Now we move to the research methodology. So in this research design, I will using qualitative and quantitative. So for the qualitative, I will using the observation and interviewing in the research, and quantitative, I will use the writing test. Also, I will use the collect the data by the observation sheet and the kertas penilaian. And the population, I will do this research for the 10 grade students of SMA Negeri 10 Pontianak. And then tools of data collection. There's a planning, interviewing, action. There's a planning, action, observation, and reflection. For the planning, I will plan the material and plan the observation interviewing sheet and writing test sheet. And for the action, I will give the students about the fantasy movie, and then I will explain it about fantasy movie and the related to the narrative text. After that, I will ask students for do the writing test, and the writing test is content that students must be rewrite what they have watched from the fantasy movies and menentukan which is the structure of the narrative text, which the event, which the orientation, and which the resolution complication. And then after that, I will do the observation about the result from the writing test and interview. I will do the observation for the writing test and for the interview. The interview is such as is there any effectiveness while they watch the movie or while they see the short story or just read the short story, something like that. And for the reflection, I will reflect all the result of the data that I have collected. Is the result successful or not? If not, if maybe the result is not successful, it's not effective. If not, if the method didn't improve students writing narrative text and students understanding about narrative text, maka researcher must memikirkan ulang metode yang harus diujikan kembali kepada studentsnya. Something like that. All right, I think that's all from my presentation about my proposal design. Thank you very much. I think that's all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.